Hello, today we are going to learn how to rotate an object to face the mouse position. So let's play it to see what are we going to make. So whenever we move the mouse, we'll get this object to face it. So if you don't want to wait and see how it's being done, I will just show you how the code looks like. We've got two options. We'll do it with Rigidbody component, and we can do it with transform rotation. So it's up to you which one you want. So let's get into it. I will just delete it so we can start from the beginning. I'll go back to Unity, press on our object and remove Rigidbody component. I'll save it. So we have our object created out of empty object, and then I added 3 dots to it. The important thing to notice is that our object should be facing right. So whenever your object or some sprite looks like, it should be pointing to the right. If it's not, you can add another empty and place it here so that you can rotate it so that it faces right. Do I repeat myself? Okay, let's go back into the script. We are doing this in the update method, and the first thing we need to do is to get our mouse position, and we have to convert it to the word points. If you move your mouse, it is reflected on the screen. So we have to use our camera to change this position from the screen to the word position. So let's do it. We are creating vector 3. We'll call it mouse position. And we have to assign a method to it that will convert those positions into the word position. So let's use the camera. And then we are using the main camera, so just type it this way. And now we have to change screen to word point. We are using this method. Add parentheses, and inside, as you can see, we have to provide some position. What position? Position of our mouse. So in order to do it, we are typing input and then mouse position. We can create additional vector that we call direction so that we can see the difference between the mouse position and the position of this object that needs to rotate. We have to have this vector to know how to rotate, this object. So let's create another vector 3, call it direction, and assign this difference to it. So first we get the target position, which in our case is mouse position. So mouse position, and take away transform and position. So next we have to use a special method that will calculate an angle. Let's create a variable first of type float and call it angle, and we assign to it this special method, which is mathf18.2, and if you open parentheses, you can see that it's expecting some float y and float x and returns the angle in radians. Oh, we don't want to deal with radians, so we will have to change them later on, but let's stick to those arguments that are provided in the parentheses. So first, float y and float x. We are using this direction vector that we just created. So just use direction and then y. After the comma, we are adding the direction and x. So as it was stated, this will return a value in radians, but we don't want to deal with radians. So we are multiplying it by another method that will change this radians to degrees. So rad to degrees and semicolon at the end. We've got it done. Now it's time to rotate it. First we rotate it with the transform component. So just type transform and then rotation, and this will equal to quaternion because quaternion is responsible for rotations. And after the dot, we are going to use the method called angle axis. And then inside the parentheses, we have to provide an angle and then the vector 3 axis. So let's put our angle that we just created above. And after the colon, we can put vector 3 and then forward. So this is quite important, and as I told you before, that our object needs to be facing right, and now it will be reflected with this vector 3 forward. Okay, this is pretty much done. Let's save it, go back to Unity and see if this is working. I'll press play, and as you can see, our object is rotating to face the mouse position. So now we can do it with Rigidbody component. Make the reference to Rigidbody first. So just type Rigidbody to DRB, and inside the start method just make a reference to it. So get component and type Rigidbody 2D and parentheses, and later on we will just comment it out because we're not using the transform component anymore. We want to use Rigidbody, so just type Rigidbody and then rotation, and that should be equal to our angle. So just type angle and save it. So as you can see, this is quite easy. And go back to Unity. Don't forget to add Rigidbody component to it. So just type on it and use gravity scale, set it to 0. So we don't want our object to drop down, and press play. And now this is working exactly the same as it was working with the transform component.